Okay, so mine was about the descriptive grading system and how that's different from the traditional letter grading system. And it talks about a couple of the different advantages and disadvantages of using each system, of using either the narrative descriptive type of grading or the letter type of grading. And so I'm going to talk about that in more detail in the notes. So, descriptive or narrative grading system is the most commonly known alternative to letter grading. And so Marshall, who was the author of the article that I read, had some reasons against letter grading, in that he said that they didn't show the students' actual progress, and that it labels students like, oh, Joey's a B student, or Anna's an A student, and stuff like that. And so teacher looks upon the students more as things to be classified, and he concedes, Marshall, this author, that there are some advantages, that it's a universal system, and that it's more systematic. So descriptive grading actually describes how the student has progressed. You have more liberty as a teacher to be able to describe how they're progressing, what they're doing well at, what they need help with. So no student is exactly the same as each other, so they can't be described in the same ways. Like an A doesn't describe each student the same way. And so this helps grades to be secondary to the teaching itself. And Marshall said that the students should not, or the teachers should not have a system imposed. They should be able to choose what kind of grading they use in their classroom, because the letter-based grading can be damaging. So teachers in the descriptive method should write their evaluations of each student just on a blank sheet of paper, different for each student. And the teacher also should be evaluating their own teaching as they see the student's progress. This type of descriptive grading is more humanist. It captures details better of a student's learning. It also lowers student stress and makes more focus on learning. And it encourages students to think in more complex ways. There are some disadvantages to the narrative system, which is that it may attract slackers, like people who don't want grades. And it's pretty labor intensive for teachers because you're doing this individual grading for each student, which is difficult in large classes. It's difficult when the students are trying to transfer their grades to employment or grad school because they don't have the traditional grades. And so also many of your science-based classes are going to use numbers anyways. You can't get out of that even for descriptive. So the advantages to the letter grade system, like the traditional A, B, C, D, F, is that it's more easily interpreted. It motivates the student to do their best. It's pretty objective. It's not as subject to bias. It shows the student's strengths and weaknesses and where they are in relation to their peers. The disadvantages to the letter grade system is that it's impersonal. It leads to student anxiety, and it sometimes detracts from the actual learning in your student-teacher relationships. It turns more into like a grade giver and grade earner. And so grade inflation could also make lower grades meaningless. Like everybody gets within the 90s, which isn't really how it works. So yeah, pretty much a little more going back to what a narrative grading is that it's the student's performance described in one paragraph minimum. And it may summarize students' test scores, or it may comment on whether or not a student is working up to their potential. It may comment on the student's writing contributions to class discussions. It's more of an attempt to a holistic, humanistic analysis of the student. So that's the argument that's made for this different type of grading, which is the narrative.